Why do the most powerful CEOs eat alone? Why do dictators trust no one? Why did Machiavelli himself warn that those who seek ultimate power must embrace ultimate solitude? The answer isn't what you think. Power doesn't make you lonely. Loneliness makes you powerful. And if you've ever wondered why the chess masters of life seem to operate from the shadows, disconnected from the crowd, you're about to discover a truth that will change how you see every interaction, every relationship, and every move you make in the game of influence. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli discovered a brutal truth that most people refuse to accept. The price of real power is eternal solitude, not by accident but by design. The moment you understand why isolation isn't the consequence of power, but its prerequisite, you'll see why every great leader, every strategic mastermind, every person who truly shapes the world operates from a position of calculated loneliness. Today, I'm going to show you the 6 Machiavellian principles that explain why the throne is always a seat for one. The first truth you must accept, if you wish to understand power, is that isolation is its inevitable price. The higher you climb, the fewer companions you will have beside you. At the base of society, where common men live, there is abundance of friendship, of laughter, of constant company. The merchant shares wine with his peers, the soldier drinks with his comrades, the farmer works among his neighbors. They depend on one another for comfort, for survival, and for a sense of belonging. But the moment a man begins to rise above them, he finds himself cut off. Why is this so? Because power changes the nature of relationships. A man of no authority may have friends who see him as an equal. But the moment fortune lifts him higher, those same friends see him differently. They may disguise it, but inside their hearts they begin to envy, to resent, to desire what he possesses. Their affection transforms into calculation. Their loyalty becomes conditional. The ruler soon realizes he is surrounded not by friends, but by watchers, each waiting for a moment to take advantage. Consider the prince. At first, he may trust his closest circle, those who supported him before he came to power. But as his authority grows, so does the ambition of those around him. A counselor may offer advice, but is it to help the prince or to advance his own schemes? A captain may swear loyalty, but is it loyalty to the ruler or to the rewards he hopes to gain? Even family, the very blood that binds, cannot be relied upon. Brothers murder brothers for thrones, fathers are betrayed by sons, wives conspire with rivals. History is painted in betrayal, and every tale begins with trust given too freely. Therefore, the ruler must begin to withdraw. He must reduce his circle, limit his confessions, hide his fears. He learns quickly that those who appear as companions are, in truth, potential threats. He speaks less, listens more, and guards his inner world. This creates the perception that he is distant, that he is cold, even that he is lonely. But such distance is not weakness. It is survival. Isolation also serves another purpose. It separates the ruler from the ruled. A leader who becomes too familiar, too friendly, loses the aura of authority. When the people see him as one of their own, they cease to fear him, and where fear is absent, respect soon vanishes. The prince must remain above them, as if upon a mountain peak, visible, admired, but unreachable. This is why kings sit on thrones elevated above the crowd, why generals eat apart from their soldiers, why emperors are shielded by protocol. The distance is deliberate, for intimacy breeds contempt. But there is a deeper reason why power demands solitude. At the summit, decisions must be made alone. No council, no assembly, no group of advisors can bear the weight of responsibility for you. They may offer counsel, but in the end, the burden of choice falls upon a single man. When to strike, when to show mercy, when to risk everything, and when to withdraw. These decisions cannot be shared. And because the responsibility is his alone, so too must be the solitude. The ruler who fears isolation will always be weak. He will seek constant company to soothe his doubts. He will share too much of his mind, allowing others to influence him until his authority becomes divided. But the ruler who accepts isolation, who embraces the silence of being alone, becomes strong. For in solitude, he learns to rely on his own judgment. He sharpens his instincts, distrusts illusions, and grows accustomed to the weight of command. Even in moments of triumph, the prince stands apart. He may be celebrated by the crowd, honored with songs, praised with titles, yet when the noise fades, he sits alone with his thoughts. He understands that the cheers of today may become the curses of tomorrow. Popularity is fleeting, loyalty is fragile, but solitude is constant. The ruler who accepts this walks with steady feet, unshaken by the shifting winds of public favor. Do not be deceived by appearances. The powerful may seem to be surrounded at all times by advisors, guards, companions, and admirers. But this is an illusion. The king at his banquet table dines in silence, even as the hall erupts in laughter. The emperor surrounded by generals trusts not a single one fully. The modern leader may appear with friends and supporters, yet in private he knows his throne rests on fragile ground. Power is a crown of solitude, and those who wear it must bear its weight with endurance. If there is one lesson that rulers throughout history have paid for with their blood, it is this: trust is the weakness of the powerful, not because trust itself is evil, but because it opens the door to betrayal. The higher a man rises, the more enemies he collects. But paradoxically, it is not the open enemy who destroys him most often. It is the trusted friend, the beloved companion, the one allowed closest to his heart. Think of Julius Caesar, a man adored by the people, feared by his rivals, admired by his legions. He could have faced 1,000 external threats and survived them, but he did not fall at the hands of foreign kings or hostile armies. He fell beneath the dagger of Brutus, the man he trusted like a son. And what destroyed him was not the sharpness of the blade, but the sharpness of betrayal. The enemy outside is predictable, visible, and declared, but the enemy who calls himself your ally is invisible until it is too late. This is the curse of power. The more you hold, the more others covet what you have. They may smile, flatter, and swear loyalty, but beneath their words lies hunger. Some desire wealth, some influence, others crave the throne itself. And the most dangerous of them are not those who openly oppose you, but those who pretend to serve you. They enter your inner circle, they earn your confidence, and then, when the moment is right, they strike. Machiavelli himself warned that rulers must learn to see the world not as they wish it to be, but as it is. And in the real world, trust is a currency that must be spent with extreme caution. The ordinary man may afford the luxury of trusting freely. His downfall affects little beyond his own household. But a ruler, a leader, a man of true influence, his downfall brings kingdoms to ruin, armies to collapse, nations to chaos. For him, the cost of misplaced trust is catastrophic. Consider the courts of kings. History is filled with monarchs poisoned by their wives, manipulated by their ministers, betrayed by their closest confidants. Why does this pattern repeat? Because intimacy blinds the powerful. When affection or friendship enters the heart of a ruler, his judgment weakens. He ignores warning signs, dismisses doubts, explains away suspicious actions, and believes loyalty where none exists. This blindness creates the perfect opportunity for betrayal. That is why the wise prince must discipline his heart. He may grant trust in appearances, but never in reality. He may smile and accept companionship, but within himself he must remain guarded. He may listen to advice, but never allow his counselors to control his hand. He must reward loyalty when it is useful, but never confuse loyalty with love. For love can shift, but necessity binds stronger. Men remain loyal not because they adore you, but because their survival depends on you. To build such loyalty, the ruler must design structures of dependence. His generals must need his favor to maintain their position. His advisors must need his wealth to retain their influence. His subjects must feel his presence as the source of their security. In this way, Loyalty grows not from blind trust, but from cold necessity. If those around you cannot live without you, their betrayal becomes less likely. But if you allow yourself to believe in their pure devotion, you open your chest to their knife. The powerful man who trusts without caution soon becomes a puppet. He is no longer master of his own decisions, but a servant to the whispers of others. He reveals his secrets, confides his fears, exposes his weaknesses. And once his weaknesses are known, they will be used against him. A prince must reveal nothing that cannot be turned to his advantage. His thoughts must be his own, his strategy his own, his fears locked within. This is why you will notice that the greatest leaders appear to listen carefully, but reveal little. They invite counsel, but their decisions remain theirs alone. They maintain the appearance of trust, but they trust no one fully. Their eyes are always searching, weighing, testing, never blinded by affection. Even when surrounded by allies, they know they are alone. This is not paranoia, it is survival. Trust is a chain. To give it fully is to bind yourself to another's will. Once bound, you are no longer master. The powerful man cannot afford this. He must remain unchained, free to act without hesitation, free to turn against anyone who threatens his position. If that means living in constant caution, so be it. Better to be cautious and alive than trusting and destroyed. The man who rises to power quickly discovers that companionship, though sweet in appearance, often conceals poison beneath its surface. At first, it seems natural to surround oneself with friends, advisors, and supporters. To the ordinary mind, companionship offers comfort, reassurance, and the illusion of strength in numbers. But to the ruler, to the man who sits above others, companionship is dangerous because every companion is a potential manipulator. Every voice that whispers in his ear carries its own ambition. The truth is this: no man seeks the company of the powerful without a reason. Few sit beside a ruler simply for the pleasure of his presence. Instead, they are drawn by hunger. Hunger for position, for wealth, for influence, for the chance to bend the ruler's will toward their own desires. And this hunger, no matter how disguised, breeds manipulation. Companions will cloak their ambition in the language of friendship. They will flatter, they will agree, they will pretend to care for the man himself, when in truth they care only for what he can give them. Observe carefully the way people behave in the courts of kings, in the halls of emperors, even in the modern offices of leaders. You will see men and women leaning forward with smiles, offering advice, giving endless opinions, and presenting themselves as indispensable. Yet, if you listen beneath their words, you will hear something else. Every suggestion carries a shadow of self-interest. Every proposal, though it may appear to benefit the prince, ultimately benefits the speaker most of all. The powerful man is never surrounded by true companions, but by actors who play their parts with skill, and herein lies the danger. The ruler who listens too much, who places weight upon every voice, soon becomes entangled in a web of manipulation. One advisor whispers one thing, another whispers the opposite. One friend insists upon war, another counsels peace. Each speaks not to reveal the truth, but to gain favor, to secure advantage, to tilt the scales toward their own outcome. If the ruler lacks discipline, he becomes confused, hesitant, and ultimately dependent upon the opinions of others. He no longer rules. He is ruled by the very voices that surround him. This is why Machiavelli warns us that a ruler must be cautious of constant companionship. It is far better to stand apart and maintain clarity than to drown in the noise of competing ambitions. Solitude sharpens the judgment, while companionship clouds it. The crowd of voices creates a fog, and within that fog, manipulation flourishes. You must understand that men are natural flatterers, especially when speaking to one who holds power. They know that the powerful crave confirmation, that the ear delights in hearing its own thoughts repeated back in the language of loyalty. And so they flatter, they agree. They shape their words to please rather than to guide. This is the most subtle form of manipulation, for the ruler begins to mistake the echo of his own desires for wisdom. But wisdom is not born from flattery, it is born from reality. To rely too heavily on companions is to surround oneself with mirrors, each reflecting only what one wishes to see. Even the gestures of companionship, the smiles, the gifts, the gestures of loyalty, must be read with suspicion. A man who flatters you today may betray you tomorrow, once his hunger has outgrown his patience. A woman who swears allegiance may be secretly plotting with your rivals, seeking her own advantage. Every companion is a negotiator, striking bargains unseen, playing games behind veils of affection. The ruler who forgets this truth will soon find himself weakened, steered not by his own hand but by invisible strings pulled by others. Notice too that the more companions one gathers, the more divided one's power becomes. Each ally expects reward, each friend demands attention, each voice requires acknowledgement. The ruler who tries to please them all will spend his strength serving them rather than serving his own purpose. And once he begins to serve them, he has already surrendered a portion of his authority. He becomes a prisoner of companionship, unable to act freely. For every action must be weighed against the expectations of others. To remain unshaken, the ruler must cultivate a posture of selective distance. He may permit companionship in appearance, but never in essence. He may keep advisors, but never give them his soul. He may listen, but he must listen with suspicion, filtering every word, testing every motive, seeking not what is spoken, but what is concealed. For companions will always reveal their true intentions if you look not at their words, but at the benefits their counsel brings them. The ruler who stands alone in judgment is the ruler who remains free. He consults, but he does not submit. He hears, but he does not obey. He understands that companionship is a theater, and every actor plays for personal gain. To forget this is to walk blindly into manipulation. To remember it is to stand above the stage, directing the play, while never becoming a character in it. What most men fear, the wise ruler embraces. Loneliness, which ordinary people treat as a curse, is in truth one of the greatest weapons of the powerful. To be alone is not to be weak, it is to be beyond the grasp of others. For when a man is alone, no one can predict his every thought, no one can map his next move, no one can chain him with expectations. His solitude becomes a cloak, hiding his true designs, and from this cloak comes both fear and respect. Consider how mystery shapes the perception of men. The ruler who spends his days among companions, revealing his thoughts, sharing his plans, becomes known too well. His strengths are measured, his weaknesses catalogued, his habits predictable. And once he is predictable, he becomes vulnerable. But the solitary man, the one who keeps distance, appears unfathomable. None can say for certain what he intends, whom he favors, or what he despises. This uncertainty itself is a form of power, for men fear what they cannot calculate. A king who dines alone, who speaks rarely, who keeps his counsel within himself, casts an aura of mystery that magnifies his authority. The people whisper about him, filling the silence with their own imaginations. His generals remain cautious, for they cannot be sure if their loyalty is secure or if punishment waits just beyond the curtain. His ministers tread carefully, for the ruler's silence denies them the knowledge of his true intentions. In this way, loneliness transforms into a weapon sharper than any blade. It is the weapon of uncertainty. You must understand, human beings crave knowledge of those who command them. They want to know what the ruler feels, what he plans, where he stands. And so they press close, seeking familiarity, hoping to read his thoughts and predict his actions. But the ruler who withholds, who does not grant this familiarity, places himself in a position of superiority. He becomes the master of information. While others reveal themselves through words and emotions, he reveals nothing. And in revealing nothing, he becomes untouchable. This solitude also frees the powerful man from manipulation, For when one allows constant companionship, others find ways to play upon his emotions, to twist his desires, to appeal to his weaknesses. They smile, they flatter, they feign concern, all in an effort to bend his will. But when he maintains distance, when he keeps loneliness as his shield, their weapons fail. The flatterer finds no opening, for his words fall into silence. The manipulator finds no anchor, for his target reveals no reaction. The ruler who appears alone disarms those who seek to exploit him. Loneliness also forces self-reliance, and this too is a weapon. When a man cannot lean on others, he must lean on his own strength. He sharpens his judgment, hones his instincts, and learns to trust only in his own calculations. The soldier who marches without allies grows strong, for he depends on no one to save him. Likewise, the ruler who stands alone becomes formidable, for he is not weakened by the need for constant approval or companionship. His solitude is his training ground, and from it emerges a mind that cannot be swayed by the desires of others. But do not confuse solitude with weakness of spirit. Many men believe that loneliness is the sign of a heart abandoned, that to be alone is to be unloved, unwanted, forgotten. This is the thinking of the weak, the herd who cannot stand without company. The powerful see differently. To them, loneliness is proof of independence, evidence that they do not rely upon the constant presence of others to feel secure. In fact, their very distance makes them more desired. For men crave access to what is denied. When the ruler stands apart, his value increases. The less he is seen, the more he is sought. The fewer his words, the greater their weight. The lonelier he appears, the more others struggle to be near him. Look through history and you will see this pattern. The prophets who withdrew into deserts, the generals who camped alone before battle, the emperors who kept chambers guarded by walls of protocol, all understood that separation creates reverence. The man who is always available, always surrounded, is taken for granted. The man who withholds himself, who guards his presence like treasure, becomes a figure of awe, even in the modern age. This truth does not vanish. The leader who maintains distance from his subordinates commands greater respect than the one who mingles freely. The business magnate who remains silent until the crucial moment wields more influence than the one who speaks endlessly. The figure who appears withdrawn and inaccessible acquires a mystique that magnifies his power. And mystique, once established, is a force that bends men without the need for force. To wield loneliness as a weapon requires discipline. It demands the ability to endure silence, to accept separation, to resist the lure of constant companionship. It requires the strength to let others wonder about your inner world, even as they try to break through the wall you have built. But once mastered, this discipline becomes a shield against manipulation, a cloak of mystery, and a sword of authority. The powerful man does not run from loneliness. He sharpens it and uses it as one of his deadliest tools. Powerful men are rarely alone in appearance. Look closely at kings, emperors, rulers, and leaders throughout history, and you will see them surrounded by vast courts, advisors, servants, allies, generals, and flatterers. From a distance, it seems as though their lives overflow with companionship, that they are never without friends, never without loyal supporters. Yet this vision is a stage, a carefully constructed performance. The truth, as always, lies beneath the surface. Companionship at the top is nothing more than illusion. A king sits at a banquet table filled with laughter and voices, yet not one of those who eat beside him is his equal. They drink from his wine, they feast from his table, but they remain subjects, never companions. Their smiles are born of fear, their loyalty built upon necessity. Remove the king's crown, and those same faces would scatter like smoke. The warmth he sees around him does not belong to him. It belongs to the power he holds. The illusion is so convincing that even the ruler himself may at times believe it, until betrayal tears the mask away. This illusion is necessary, for the ruler cannot display his solitude openly. The people must believe that their king is admired, respected, even beloved. They must see him surrounded by allies, for to appear abandoned is to invite rebellion. Therefore, rulers create spectacles of companionship. They parade their courts, they show their armies, they surround themselves with trusted advisors. But these are not bonds of friendship. They are symbols. Theater designed to project strength. The appearance of companionship is useful, but its substance is hollow. Imagine the emperor who sits upon his throne as petitioners line the hall, each waiting to offer counsel or flattery. To the common eye, the emperor appears to command endless loyalty, to be the center of countless affections. But to the emperor himself, every petitioner is a burden. Every word a demand, every gesture an attempt to extract some advantage. The crowd may be large, but not one in the crowd offers true companionship. What they offer is expectation, and expectation is a chain. This is the bitter truth. The powerful are sought after not for who they are, but for what they represent. A wealthy man is loved for his wealth, a ruler admired for his throne, a general respected for his command. Strip away the crown, the fortune, the title, and watch how quickly the illusion dissolves. The same voices that once praised now fall silent. The same hands that reached in loyalty now turn away. Companionship built on power is companionship that vanishes the moment power falters. But here lies the genius of the powerful. They know this truth, yet they use it to their advantage. They understand that illusion itself is a weapon. By projecting the image of constant support, they discourage rebellion, for who dares rise against a man who appears so secure? By displaying the theater of companionship, they manipulate perception. The people see strength where there may be vulnerability, unity where there may be discord. In this way, the illusion becomes almost as valuable as genuine loyalty, and in some cases, even more effective. Still, the ruler who confuses illusion for reality is doomed. He begins to believe in the affection of those around him. He mistakes flattery for loyalty, presence for friendship, admiration for love. And when the mask slips, when betrayal arrives, he is crushed by a disappointment he should have expected. For betrayal never comes as a surprise to the wise. It is the natural conclusion of false companionship. The ruler must never forget that he walks among actors, not brothers. Observe how ceremonies are designed. A king walks through his court and all bow. They rise only when he allows. They speak only when he gestures. This ritual is not companionship, it is control. It creates the illusion that all are united, when in truth each man bows because he must, not because he wishes. The ruler stands in the center of this theater, admired yet alone, praised yet isolated, surrounded by hundreds yet unable to trust a single soul. Even in moments of celebration, the illusion persists. The general victorious in war may be greeted by the cheers of his army, the ruler by the applause of his people, yet in the silence of his chamber, he knows that none of these voices belong to him personally. They belong to his position, to his achievements, to his strength, and when those fade, so too will the cheers. True companionship is absent, for true companionship requires equality, and equality cannot exist where there is power. Therefore, the wise ruler learns to act upon this understanding. He accepts the illusion, uses it, but never mistakes it for truth. He knows that every face at his table, every voice in his chamber, every hand that clasps his own does so for a reason. He does not hate them for it. He simply recognizes the reality. He sees that what appears as companionship is, in fact, a mirror reflecting his own power back at him. And mirrors, no matter how bright, cannot embrace, cannot protect, cannot be trusted. Power, my friend, is not sustained by constant noise, nor by the endless chatter of companions who flatter and distract. No, it is sustained by clarity of vision, and that clarity is born from isolation. A powerful man knows that to remain at the top, he must see further, anticipate sharper, and decide quicker than those beneath him. But how can he accomplish this when surrounded by voices that blur his own reasoning? This is why solitude is not weakness. It is the sharpening stone upon which great rulers and thinkers grind their minds. Consider the great generals of history. Before a decisive battle, they did not feast in loud company or drown themselves in voices of contradiction. They retreated alone with their maps, their thoughts, their instincts. In the silence, they could hear the truth of their own reasoning without interruption. They could see the battlefield not as others wished it to be, but as it truly was. And when the moment came to act, their commands struck with precision. Because their vision was sharpened by solitude, isolation allows the powerful to perceive the world without the veil of other people's illusions. When a man is constantly surrounded by company, he begins to see through their eyes instead of his own. He accepts their anxieties, their hopes, their interpretations until his vision becomes clouded. But the one who spends time alone peels away these layers and confronts reality directly. He sees people for what they are, not what they pretend to be. He sees danger before it arrives, betrayal before it manifests, weakness before it collapses. Machiavelli himself wrote that a prince must always learn to see things as they truly are, not as they appear. An appearance, my friend, is crafted by the crowd. A ruler who believes what the crowd shows him has already lost his crown. But the ruler who isolates himself, who dares to look with his own eyes, becomes immune to illusions. He cannot be deceived so easily because he has trained himself to see truth in silence. Where no voice whispers lies into his ear, isolation also strengthens independence of judgment. Many are weak because they cannot decide without the approval of others. They lean on friends, on advisors, on public opinion. But the powerful know that approval is poison. If you rely on it, you will never act when it matters most. A man who has spent time alone, who has wrestled with his own doubts and forged his own answers, becomes unshakable. He does not hesitate because he does not fear disapproval. He has already learned to stand with only his own shadow for company, and thus he can stand against armies if needed. Let us not mistake this for loneliness. Loneliness is the complaint of the weak, who cannot bear the silence of their own mind. Isolation is the weapon of the strong, who use silence as a forge. When a man sits alone, he either breaks beneath the weight of his own thoughts, or he rises above them and becomes master of himself. This is why the powerful embrace solitude. It is their battlefield, their training ground, their secret council chamber. Think of it as a king sharpening a blade. Surrounded by noise, the blade grows dull with every careless strike. But in solitude, with deliberate precision, he sharpens it until it gleams, ready to cut through anything. The mind is no different. Only in silence can it be honed to the sharpness needed to govern, to conquer, to endure. Those who constantly need people around them are like merchants who cannot stop counting coins. They are trapped by the noise of their own dependence. But those who stand alone, they are like architects who can already see the palace before the first stone is laid. Their vision is clear, and their power flows from that clarity. This is why, if you observe carefully, the most powerful people seem distant. They are not distracted by endless conversation. They do not crave the comfort of company. They retreat, they reflect, they calculate. And when they return, they are sharper, stronger, and more dangerous than before. Because in isolation, they have already played the game 10 moves ahead of everyone else. Power requires vision, and vision requires solitude. Without it, a man sees only what others want him to see. With it, he sees the truth. And truth, in the hands of the powerful, becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. Power, as Machiavelli knew, does not come from the crowd. It comes from the man who dares to stand apart from it. The strongest rulers, the most dangerous leaders, and the most influential minds were never those surrounded by endless company, but those who mastered the art of being alone. Solitude sharpened their vision, hardened their will, and gave them clarity the masses could never possess. So the question is not whether the most powerful people are alone. History has already answered that. The real question is, can you bear the silence long enough to see the truth? Because only when you embrace isolation will you stop being controlled by others and start shaping destiny with your own hands.